You're listening to The Briefing, first broadcast on the 15th of January 2026 on Monocle Radio. Hello and welcome to The Briefing, broadcasting live from Studio One here at Midori House in London. I'm Chris Chermak. Coming up on today's program, Phase 2 of the US-brokered peace plan is officially underway for Gaza. We'll explore a meeting in Cairo today to discuss the next steps. After that, we'll speak with Thomas Chatterton Williams about protests in Minneapolis and beyond. We'll also head to Paris, which is alive with two major events on the design calendar. And finally, it is the return of the global countdown, the first of 2026. Fernando Augusto Pacheco, what kind of mood has the new year put you in?
A very good mood, Chris, because today we're focusing on the sunny sounds of Côte d'Ivoire.
All that right here on The Briefing with me, Chris Chermak. A very happy Thursday to all of our listeners. We'll start today with Gaza, where, in theory at least, there is some hopeful news in the start of Phase 2 of a peace plan brokered by the United States last year. Talks are taking place in Cairo today with Palestinian militant groups in attendance and including the likely new head of the so-called Board of Peace that will help administer the next phases of setting up some sort of government and reconstruction for Gaza. Well, joining us now is Nada Al-Taher, senior foreign reporter at The National, based in Abu Dhabi. Nada, thanks very much for coming on our show. Let's start with what we are expecting from Cairo today.
So as you mentioned, there will be a meeting with the 12 members of this temporary transitional technocratic committee that will be headed by Ali Shaf, a former deputy planning minister in the Palestinian Authority. And as you also mentioned, that many of these members were invited to Cairo. Some of them left a few days ago. It seems that there is some sort of agreement to all the 12 names. Today, they're going to be discussing the committee's mandate, its briefs, its priorities, basically what they're going to be doing and how they're going to govern Gaza's day-to-day. And yes, it seems like an optimistic and positive step for sure, but we also need to remember that Phase 1 has not fulfilled all the obligations that it was meant to. So I'm not sure how we can move on to a Phase 2 when Phase 1 is not complete.
That is certainly the case. I mean, and whether Phase 1 is complete, Phase 2 is going to be extremely difficult. All of this is extremely difficult. But to focus on this technocratic government that you mentioned being set up, just maybe lay out for us, if you could, I guess the division of labor here, because there is also this so-called Board of Peace that the U.S. is proposing that's likely to be announced in the next couple of days. Their likely leader, Bulgarian diplomat Nikolai Mladenov, is also in Cairo. How does that fit into this technocratic Palestinian government that you're describing?
So think of the technocratic committee as a sort of, as I said, just a day-to-day run-of-the-mill activities. There's obviously so much to do right now in Gaza. Everything needs doing, whether it's feeding the people, sheltering the people, rebuilding homes and hospitals, healing people, bringing them abroad, for healthcare, opening the Rafah border for people to return into Gaza, because right now it's only open for people who want to leave. The committee members will be in charge of portfolios like finance, water, local councils, the judiciary, security, health, and agriculture. And then the Board of Peace seems to be the mothership, right? The kind of the broader view, the long-term view, the what's going to happen to Gaza, the where do you see yourself in 5 years type of authority. Which will see the handover of power completely, in theory at least, from Hamas onto an authority that everybody agrees on. And that's going to be difficult.
That is obviously going to be difficult, not only because, of course, phase 2 supposedly is, well, it's the really hard part, isn't it? Because it would include, in theory, a disarmament of Hamas and Palestinian militant groups, and also the exit of Israeli forces who, as you mentioned, are, well, violating phase 1 of this peace plan so far. Is there any real likelihood of either of those things happening?
To be honest, I mean, if it's anything like we're seeing, for example, in Lebanon, where Israel maintains, self-proclaimed autonomy to strike anytime that it, views anything or perceives anything to be a threat, it's not really an optimistic situation because in theory, it sounds great. In practice, it's not quite going according to plan. The number of trucks that were supposed to enter every day have not gone in. In fact, a number of NGOs that are more than willing and prepared and have been operating in Gaza have now been deregistered by Israel. People continue to suffer in the cold and in the rain. Israel has expanded its occupation of Gaza to more than 50%. As part of a yellow line that keeps moving, sometimes arbitrarily overnight. 440 people have been killed by Israel since the beginning of the so-called ceasefire, which basically is an oxymoron because they have not ceased fire. So and all the while, this is completely sanctioned by the US, and it seems to get a green tick. Benjamin Netanyahu celebrated the new year with the US President Donald Trump. So it doesn't seem like there are real checks and balances. All that said, some, perceive this to be as a sort of, as long as the US is on board, the one that can cause some sort of pressure on Israel to bring some results, that it's better to have them on board at least partially than not at all. So it really depends on how you look at it. But for the most part, Gaza has not seen that major improvement, that dream that basically this was all purported to be.
Just finally, Nada, then, if it is up to the US to put, at least in theory, some pressure on Israel here to pull back, is it up to the region, whether that is Egypt, Qatar, others who are involved here, to put pressure on Hamas to hold up its end of the bargain?
I mean, for sure, that's what mediators do. They try to come up with the best possible outcome in the worst possible scenario. And I mean, the US has thanked Egypt and Qatar for their role and other mediators. And I don't envy them. I don't envy the situation that they're in. They're in a tough position. But Hamas has expressed some sort of willingness to comply with its end of the agreement, albeit now there's this outstanding issue of the remaining hostage who cannot be found right now under the rubble because, for various reasons. One of them is because Israel is withholding the entry of, machinery that is required to remove the very rubble that it created. So it's a bit complicated, but for sure the mediators must be doing their hardest and their best right now to bring the points of views closer and to bring some sort of result, I suppose, in place of no result.
Nada Al-Tar, senior foreign reporter at The National. Thanks very much for joining us today on a complicated story, as always. Well, now here's Tom Webb with the day's other news headlines.
Thanks, Chris. Military personnel from France and Germany are heading to Greenland for a joint military exercise as Donald Trump renews his desires to acquire the island. The move is intended to reassure the US president over its security. A meeting of officials from the US, Denmark and Greenland yesterday produced no quick fix for the dispute. Turkey plans to deploy fighter jets to Estonia and Romania as part of NATO's enhanced air policing missions. The 4-month deployment will begin in August this year in Estonia, followed by another rotation in Romania. That's according to Ankara's defence ministry. This follows what NATO calls repeated violations of Allied airspace by Russia. Rome has imposed a new 30-kilometre-an-hour speed limit in its historic centre. It's an effort to reduce road collisions and pollution. The city's transport chief said the new rules would be enforced gradually over the next 30 days to allow drivers to get used to it. The lower limit follows an example of other European capitals, including Brussels, Paris and Helsinki. Those are the day's headlines. Back to you, Chris.
Thanks very much, Tom. To Minnesota, or Minneapolis now, where local authorities have made another plea for federal immigration and customs enforcement agents to leave the state after another person was shot in the leg and an ICE agent was in hospital as well during a night of protests. All of this is, of course, happening near to where George Floyd was killed back in 2020. And joining me now is Thomas Chatterton Williams, staff writer at The Atlantic and author of Summer of Our Discontent. Thomas, Happy New Year to you. What a start it's been.
Happy New Year. It's a pleasure to be with you.
First of all, what have you made of the current scenes in Minneapolis?
It's very disturbing. The kind of fantasy that we lived under, a kind of authoritarianism that the social justice activists of the summer of 2020 and into 2021, that kind of fantasy that we were living under totalitarianism, we're much farther along now down that dark path than we were in the past. And the tragedy, in my view, is that a lot of the kind of excesses of the left in the past helped set the table for this extraordinary reaction that a large number of Americans seem to welcome, to be honest. The most disturbing thing that we see, I think, coming out of Minnesota and other places is that the country is completely and very bitterly divided. We don't see or inhabit the same reality as our fellow countrymen anymore.
Just tell us more about that, Thomas. The fact that we're not in these realities. It's so interesting that you describe, I guess, excesses on the left that maybe led to this, but now you're just seeing the Trump administration obviously doubling down, particularly on immigration, with sending ICE agents to so many different parts of the country. Is there any way that the left can actually respond to this?
That's right. I mean, two things can be true at the same time. There really was a kind of immigration crisis under the Biden administration that was recognized too late. And that gave a kind of opening for the Trump regime to send agents who are very poorly trained into these cities and to create provocative situations that then goad the left into reacting in ways that are both self-destructive and are kind of, allowing the right to say that they're out of touch with what's really going on. So, yesterday or 2 days ago, there was a shooting again in Minneapolis of a Venezuelan migrant, but it is the case that he and some other men had attacked the ICE agent with a shovel and a broomstick. And so collapsing narratives into very simple tales of purely right and purely wrong, I think, helps the administration get away with these extraordinary abuses that are unjustified under any circumstance. Does that make sense?
That does make sense, but if that is the case, Thomas, as you're describing it, then what is, I guess, the appropriate response? How do you go about, whether it is local authorities in Minneapolis who have obviously been very outspoken about this, or the people, the protesters, how do you go about standing up to this in a way that might get through some of the divisions and discord in this country?
We're several days ahead of Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday celebration, his annual birthday holiday on Monday. And I think it's a very good time to think of the kind of moral seriousness and nonviolent self-sacrifice that he and his movement exemplified. The only real social justice movement that's made a very durable and lasting impact. I think that we have to be willing to protest and to do so in a way that doesn't allow ourselves to be provoked, because that plays right into the authoritarian hands of a very violent and very dishonest regime. We have to model that kind of and enact that kind of seriousness and be in the streets, but not to be nihilistic, not to be performative, and not to be undisciplined. I think that part of what has happened in recent days that has been so tragic is that people allowed a lack of discipline and a lack of knowing exactly what you're there for to create situations that got out of hand.
Well, Thomas, I have to ask frankly, do you get the sense that there's even stomach for that at the moment in the US? Because if we do compare this to George Floyd in 2020, that really prompted a movement, right? It prompted a wave of protests, demonstrations, the whole Black Lives Matter movement. Do you get the sense that people in the US are ready for that? It feels like, frankly, for much of the past year of the Trump administration, that there haven't been that many demonstrations. There's really been a sort of quiet opposition to what's happening, and I guess, frankly, just a confounding, people not really aware of exactly how to go about standing up to what's happening.
That's a very perceptive point you make. I think that it's just a fact that there's a kind of exhaustion that the Trump's redemption and reelection kind of felt overwhelming, and that energy that felt so palpable in the summer of 2020. We don't feel that now, because no matter what it seems was attempted, he still came back, and he came back stronger and with an enormous amount of Americans welcoming his return. So I think it's going to take some time to have that kind of conviction and that kind of energy, but I do see signs that it's growing. I see signs that Trump is weakening, and you can start to see the openings of, jockeying for position, even on the right, for what comes after his rule is over. And I call it rule because he doesn't act as though he's a steward of the Constitution. He acts as though he's a kind of ruler over both half the country that supported him and another half of the country that was conquered by him. So I think that there's an opening. Things are starting to change, but that you're absolutely right to say that there's a kind of an exhaustion and a sense of kind of learned helplessness, because he has really approached this new term with such an aggressive posture that it's disoriented many who oppose him.
Just finally then, Thomas, if you talk about exhaustion there of the people, but an opening, as there are now considerations of what happens after Donald Trump rule, as you describe it there, what does that mean for Democrats? Do you see anything on that side when it comes to the political opposition as well? How are they going to go about thinking of the day, the years after Trump?
Yeah. Well, they're going to have to really figure out how to have a positive vision, not just a critique. The country did not like the vision that the left had been showing it when it was ascendant for the past several decades. Even during Trump's first term, the left was culturally ascendant for all intents and purposes. Trump showed a counter vision. It resonated with enough voters for him to get back in office, and the left has to find some leaders who can articulate an attractive, positive vision that's not just a critique. You see a little bit of that with someone like Zoran Mamdani. Have to have a kind of national figure who can embody that kind of positivity. I'm not sure it's enough for Gavin Newsom to just counter the kind of adolescent meme culture that Trump has brought to American politics with an adolescent meme culture from the left. We really have to articulate values in a way that resonate with Americans who I think, don't love all of the kind of antagonism that this moment has brought with it. I think that there's an opening for someone who can really articulate a new, positive, collective vision forward, but it's going to have to come from a political leader.
Really interesting stuff, interesting takes. Thomas Chatterton Williams, staff writer at The Atlantic, author of Summer of Our Discontent. Thank you so much for joining us from Paris. You're listening to The Briefing on Monocle Radio. You're back with The Briefing. I'm Chris Chermek, and we are sticking with Paris, a city that is alive also with the first big design events of the year, and Monocle's design team is on the ground. There is Maison et Objet, one of the largest trade shows in the entire industry starting today, but also Paris Déco Off, which is happening in conjunction and throughout the city this year. And joining us now from the latter, if I understand this correctly, is Monocle's associate editor of design and fashion, Grace Charlton. Grace, where exactly are you joining us from?
Hi, amazing French pronunciation, Chris, by the way.
Thank you very much.
I'm currently crouching in a corner of the Musée des Arts Décoratifs. I'm just quickly seeing a little exhibition between running to different showrooms in the first and second arrondissement.
Nice French pronunciation yourself there, Grace. What describe to us what is happening there, how this kind of fits into Paris Déco Off. I guess it's just a sign that you're kind of at one spot of many throughout the French capital.
It's interesting. You can see it's already happened in Milan, but these big traditional trade fairs that used to be like massive deals in the 50s, they now have offshoots in the city that are more popular almost than the trade fairs. So I think what we've seen in Milan, we're seeing in Paris now, and it's quite interesting to see like how the young creatives are sort of making the city their own in a pretty dismal month, which is January.
I mean, how does that play out? Is it kind of different groups, disparate groups in that sense? You have like the industry professionals at something like Maison et Objet, and then something like Paris Déco Off in the city. Is that trying to attract design, people interested in design, more generalists interested in design as well?
Trade fair is for the, people looking to furnish their big hospitality project or restaurant. So the city is more for floating ideas, showing beautiful things, and I think getting the next generation inspired as well. Paris is just doing so well at the moment in terms of like championing new creatives, young design studios. They've been given opportunities to take over galleries in Paris. I went to Couton Castillo, which is a brand new design studio. They're showcasing at a gallery in the Marais, and they have like these incredible bespoke pieces. It's their first collection, and honestly, it's so beautiful. It like could come from someone who's been in the business for like 50 years.
Well, Grace, when you talk about that, these design people coming to Paris, I mean, one thing as well is how international this is. Is this an international event, or are you seeing kind of Paris stand up for itself, Paris as a design city for Parisians?
I have a theory that the January edition of the Paris Design Week is for Parisians. I think it's like for the industry to get together after Christmas and sort of like bandy and then head off into the world. But the September edition, because Maison et Objet is biannual, it happens again in September. The September edition is way more popular in terms of like international press. And I swear it's down to the weather, because no one wants to be traveling in January to Paris. But in September, a little autumnal romp in the City of Light is a lot more appealing. But there is an international presence. I mean, we're here on the ground. So yeah, it does feel a bit more Parisian.
Very interesting. Okay, so it's January. That means like people in Paris need a distraction, but people internationally aren't quite going to go there yet.
Yeah, it's basic human behavior.
Grace Charlton, Monocle's associate editor for design and fashion. Thank you very much for joining us from Paris. This is The Briefing. The jingle is back. That means it is time for the Global Countdown, the first one of 2026, with our senior correspondent and musical curator, Fernando Augusto Pacheco, fresh off of a relaxing holiday. Happy New Year to you, Faye.
Happy New Year. We're both fresh from our holidays,
We're
right?
both
different
fresh.
holidays, but still.
Different holidays. I was on the ski slopes the last few days. You were, in the sunshine.
I'll tell you a secret, Chris. I would like to ski, but just for a photo shoot. I want to dress up very nicely, very sexy. A picture, and then I removed it, and then I'll start eating and having the après ski.
Okay, so a picture, say at the top of the slope without actually going down it. Is that what you're looking for?
I'm not going down.
Okay.
I'll tell you that.
Okay, well, I hate to break it to you. That's not really the way skiing works.
Sorry, I'm joking.
But there were a lot of people, Instagramming and everything else on the slopes. I can tell you that. You're going to bring us something else, though, Fernando. You're going to go to your sunny, optimistic side, away from the ski slopes for today's Global Countdown.
That's how I like to start 2026. We're heading to Côte d'Ivoire, and we're looking at the top 5 songs this week in the country. And I have to say, the fact that it does bring the sunny optimism was one of the reasons why I chose the country.
Is this a general feeling? Is it kind of like January, even Grace was talking about in Paris? We need distractions. It's January, it's cold, it's raining here in London. You're trying to bring us some sunshine.
Absolutely. And we're going to start in a very, very good way because I think the song is beautiful. And for anyone after listening here on the briefing, I think you should also watch the video if you need some sunshine in your life. Her name is Roseline Layot and the song is called Zoe.
What is winter really, Faye, when
Exactly.
you have music like that?
We don't need winter. And I have to say, this song has been, for a few months there in the chart. So it's not even her latest single, but we have more to talk about. But Roseline doesn't come without controversies, Chris. Sorry to say.
Oh, do tell. What are the controversies?
She's very big in France as well, but one of her gigs had to be cancelled last year. Apparently, she said something homophobic, and it was quite a controversy. But, there's always a but, she did apologize, and she is coming back with more gigs in France, and apparently it was quite a sincere apology. I don't know all the intricate details, but, for now, we're okay, Roseline.
She's weathering the storm.
Yes, definitely.
What do we have at number 4? Are we continuing with this sunny? Tell me more about quickly, like the Ivory Coast in general. Is this the kind of music you get there? Is it generally a sort of happy music culture?
You know what? It is because, I think there is this kind of the traditional rhythms, this kind of Afrobeat, kind of very fast-paced. And you will see along the tracks that there is kind of a rhythm. Perhaps you don't have the traditional ballads here. I mean, I'm sure you have, but not at least in the top 5. And number 4, you see this clearly. I mean, no surprise that has been a mega hit on social media, not just in Côte d'Ivoire, but in other countries, even outside the African continent as well. I mean, it's very upbeat, this track. I mean, I think this one is for the nightclubs in Abidjan, Let's have a listen to Kejavara with Safamel, which It Hurts.
So can we bring this to nightclubs here in London in the dead of winter just to bring a little bit of happiness down wherever you might be?
It's a must, and it's a song about defiance. I mean, the lyrics are fairly simple, and he says, yes, it hurts, but you will leave. I think that's a good message for 2026, right?
Does that sum up like the entire last year and this year? Yes, it hurts, but you will live.
Exactly. And guess who's back at number 3?
Okay, are we going back to the one who has passed over her controversies?
She passed over and she released a new song, and that's why it's number 3. But, Zoe is still going very strong at number 5. So it's Roseline Layot back with a song. I mean, I did mention about ballads. I mean, this song is called Ma Dernière Relation, with my last relationship. Apparently, she's being burned in the last relationship, and she's a bit scared, going to a new one. She doesn't want to get burned again. Let's have a listen.
Don't we all?
Sois ma dernière relation, ma dernière relation. Sois ma dernière relation, ma dernière relation. Amour, sois ma dernière relation, ma dernière relation.
She's still quite upbeat, quite happy to me, Linda.
She's quite happy to celebrate her last relationship. Is that basically it?
And this is the year. Sorry, I don't know why I'm talking about Chinese horoscope, but it's the year of the horse. It's the year of new beginnings for whoever is listening. If you had a bad relationship, maybe, it's time to move on.
This is your own version of trying to bring in some look forward to 2026.
Exactly.
You can't really get hurt, or at least you'll still be alive.
Absolutely. We're being so philosophical. I'm loving this, Chris.
We're being very philosophical. We have to be at the start of this kind of year. What do we have at number 2, Faye?
And number 2, not an artist from Côte d'Ivoire. He's a French-Congolese rapper. So, I did say the songs are a beat, but look at the name of this track by Chile. Rebanav, 126 BPM or beats per minute. And one thing I can tell you, this song is indeed 126 beats per minute. So you're going to feel the vibe with this song by Chile. actually, this whole top 5 can be, it would be a very good playlist for the dance floor. Because sometimes we have very different top 5s. We have ballads, we have electro, everything's mixed. But there's kind of I don't know.
There's absolutely a dancey vibe to these. Is this one of the ways that you, Fernando, do you get through the winter with a bit of dance?
Absolutely. And, I just live through the winter thinking about summer. I don't even know how to layer, for me.
You've got to do something during the winter as well. You can't just think about summer.
I don't know what I do. Maybe I'll have some tips from you, Chris, actually.
Well, skiing is one thing to do it. I mean, that's my happy place. But anyway, I'll try and convince you of that later. What do we have at number 1? We're still going with summer and not winter.
Well, let's talk about sport for a bit. You're talking about skiing, but of course the Africa Cup of Nations is happening right now. The final, I think, is being confirmed. It's going to be between Senegal and Morocco. But of course, Côte d'Ivoire was there, but they
Morocco,
lost.
the host nation as well. Yes, sadly for Côte d'Ivoire, didn't quite pull it off.
They did not pull it off. They lost against Egypt, but everyone has their own song for the Africa Cup of Nations. And I think this one kind of represented Côte d'Ivoire. It is by a duo. They are quite iconic. They've been in the industry since 96. I say duo, actually. Sometimes it's a duo, sometimes it's 4. There's been some changes in the lineup. And the song is a celebration, is a very good football song. And this duo or group, in their songs, they do talk a little bit about politics, about economics. So there is something, it's not just about dancing and forgetting about everything. This song's a celebration of Africa in general, the continent. It's by Yode and Siro with Queen Africa.
يبغي نشط يبغي نحيح يبغي نشط ورا زيد شويه نلعب شويه.
Football and music, that is certainly one way to distract from the winters of discontent.
And there's a nod as well to Morocco in the music there. There's a little bit of the Maghreb sounds there in this track.
So every country had its own song? That was
sometimes you have unofficial songs as well. I think there's only one for the continent, but I think every country, and sometimes choices can be very random, but this is a brand new track from the group from Côte d'Ivoire.
And the fact that it's number 1 just shows the pull of football and tracks related to the African Cup of Nations.
Absolutely.
Fernando Augusto Pacheco, thank you very much for joining us. Our first global countdown of the year. That's all the time we have for this edition of The Briefing. It was produced by Hassan Anderson. Our researcher was Annalise Maynard, and our studio manager was Elliot Greenfield. The Briefing is back tomorrow at the same time. I'm Chris Chermak. Goodbye, and thanks for listening.